I'd say 12 to 24 months, there will be AI avatars that are so good, they will be indistinguishable from a human being. And when you're on a Zoom call, you won't be able to tell if you're talking to a human being or not.
I'm not sure how to respond to that, Mike. Is that going to be scary, or is that going to be a lot of fun working with these avatars? But
the new skill to learn for recruiters, and really all of us, is prompt engineering. That is the way that we get the AI to do things. Now, candidly, you're not going to get the productivity increase just out of prompt engineering. You're going to need to build some custom tools, and I think that's the next level we get to.
I think this will go a long way in getting a lot of us into that AI journey pretty quick.
We're looking at 500,000 layoffs in tech in the last 6 months, 8 months. Why? Automation. Software engineers are using GitHub, Copilot. It's a $20 a month tool, and they're 30 to 50% faster. That is a huge productivity increase when you talk about writing code.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to another edition of Hyreo Rise series of podcast and webinar. Excited for this edition of podcast because I've got a wonderful guest today who is vastly experienced. A pleasure to welcome Mike Wolford onto our podcast today. A veteran in talent acquisition, somebody who has dabbled in HR technology, and most recently a lot into AI. He is an Amazon bestseller for his book, The AI Recruiter, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us would have had a copy of that. If not, do get it ASAP. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. Warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Arun, for having me.
Right. Now, I think this subject needs no introduction. You've written a whole book about it, a whole bunch of articles about that. And the whole world is talking about how AI is going to transform the way we recruit talent into our organization. But I'll take a slightly different approach for the conversation today. I'm going to pick your brain in terms of getting some useful practical tips that our guys could actually take back to work tomorrow. I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience that you've had, managing AI in recruiting in large enterprises as well. But to begin with, let's talk about opportunities first, Mike. Now, we've heard a lot of use cases across the board, from application stage all the way to onboarding and beyond in the talent life cycle. But in your view, what are some of those immediate opportunities that we have, for using AI, for leveraging AI in improving recruiting and recruiting systems as you see it?
Well, thanks for that thoughtful question. I think in the very short term, in the near future, the new skill to learn for recruiters, and really all of us, is prompt engineering. That is the way that we get the AI to do things. Now, candidly, you're not going to get the productivity increase just out of prompt engineering. You're going to need to build some custom tools, and I think that's the next level we get to. But prompt engineering is basically an understanding of how you actually get the system to perform all these time-saving tasks for you. And you want to be able to do it repeatedly and at scale. So right now, a lot of people are using AI to write an email or something similar. And that's fine, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg of the capabilities. As we learn more and more about what the systems are capable of, they require less and less prompting to get to good action. So, for example, a prompt engineer today, if you're writing an email, there's all kinds of things you could tell the AI to keep in mind: tone, pitch, length, voice. These are all things that can be modified from pitch to pitch. And if you are writing an email every single time, you have to remember every single time to include those additional instructions into the AI. What we'll move to is where we build custom tools where all of those instructions are built into the tool itself. So you have a generic LLM, and then on top of that, you build a GPT that has the instructions. So you don't have to write, okay, every time I want you to make the tone professional. That's already programmed in. So you just say, I need an article about. And But in order to get to that level, you really have to start, I would say prompt engineering is the new Boolean, right? It's just learning how the machine works in the basics, learning how to get it to do things like write an email, a job description, prep an interview, write a candidate summary. These sort of things are automatable today. And if you're a prompt engineer and you have a GPT, you can actually automate almost all of that and save yourself a lot of time. And so I guess the unasked follow-up question, though, is what's the point? Like, why are we doing all this? And to me, if you're a recruiter right now, you want to be using this technology to automate the manual tasks so that you have the time to prep your candidates for the interview. That's something that we've gotten away from. We're so busy with paperwork, but it actually makes a big difference as to the number of offers your candidates get. So I think if I was a recruiter right now and I'm looking for practical advice, I'm saying learn prompt engineering, learn how to build your own AI tools, because tactically helping yourself today is going to be strategically helping yourself tomorrow. And what you need to be doing is automating those tasks so that you do have the time to be the advocate for your candidate. So you do have the time to prep them, so that you do have the time to do your labor market research and be the consultative partner to your hiring manager partners and hiring manager team. So you need to use AI to take all of that stuff off your plate so that you could focus on the things that I think are important. And I think most of us in this profession think are important, which is being an advocate for your candidates and a consultant to your clients.
In fact, we as a company, as a startup, we work on a lot of Gen AI and use cases like that. And what you right now talked about in terms of getting that act together in terms of prompt part of it, I think this will go a long way in getting a lot of us into that AI journey pretty quick. And that's a very practical tip I think a lot of us should start following. But if I was to kind of go one step further from that, and if you start looking at it from use case perspective, right? Let's say if I talk about candidate application part of it, recruiter screening profiles, or if you're talking about interview scheduling and making the whole interview a great experience for candidates and for the folks who are doing the interviews, all the way into getting them onto the organization through onboarding. So do you see trends? Do you see in the industry your observations on where things have started rolling far more than somewhere else?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. As far as where the impact goes, I guess I can answer that first question first more as an analyst. If you want to know where AI is going to impact, or really any industry at this point, generally speaking, there's 2 points of data you need to look at. The first is the relative cost, and the second is relative satisfaction. So, for example, the U.S. healthcare system, the relative cost is the highest per person in the world. That's a high relative cost. Satisfaction with U.S. healthcare is in the 20% range somewhere. When there's that huge gap between cost and satisfaction, that's an industry that's ripe for disruption. AI is just kind of a Swiss Army knife of disruption. It hits every industry. So there's really 2 different types of tools that we're going to see. One are the types of tools that automate the work that I was speaking about, the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that you can build yourself. And that's kind of level 1 of automation. Level 2 is we're going to see, I guess, just a different level of automation. But let me think of a very specific use. I'm trying to think of a very specific use case here. Like what you're seeing in the market from a tools perspective, like the companies who are building, they're embedding AI and they're trying to do matching is the number one thing I see. So they take your resume, the bullet points, the job descriptions, and they're trying to provide a match. I candidly think just with those 2 data points, it's going to be incredibly difficult to do. I think this is where some of the technology and the stuff that an individual can't build comes online. So for example, a phone screener. I've seen a couple of these, and it's impossible for a recruiter to interview 500 people, right? 1,000 people, which is how many people apply. sometimes. It's not uncommon for us to get that many applications. And so what do? Like, it's just not humanly possible to talk to everybody. But the phone screener will allow you to have a conversation with everybody who wants to have one. And what that will do is it'll give you that third data point. And so you'll have 3 different data points to make a decision and say, this is this percent match. From a candidate perspective, it's better because, when you've applied to 300 jobs and the recruiter only got to see 25 to 30 of those jobs, you think it was you, it was your resume, it was something. But it's just the fact that the recruiter's human and they can't possibly make it to the part of the pile where your resume was. And you may be a great match. But for this perspective, now all of a sudden, if I did have 300 people apply, first of all the candidates who had a chance to interview got one, which is nice. And secondly, when candidate 137 is a 95% match, I know right away. And so for me as the recruiter, I'm able to find all of the hidden talent that's in my application field. And that's a big win for me. And as a candidate, I can give anybody a chance to interview who wants one. And that's a lot more fair. So for me, those are the just a couple of example use cases of how we do it. The thing about it is, for us, is we need to have an ego check. We don't like giving up interviews. It's not something we take a lot of pride, and I do it better than any machine. And look, I'm not going to argue with you. You probably do. The problem is you can't do it 500 times in 30 minutes. The problem is you can't interview all 280 people who applied to your job. I'm not saying you couldn't do it better, but you just don't have enough time in the year to interview all of those people who applied and then evaluate them. It's just not humanly possible. And that's an ego hit. Because it means you got to relinquish control of a process you don't necessarily have a ton of control over to begin with, And so, there are a lot of use cases, but we're going to see 2 different levels of adoption. One, the individual user level, where we're writing our emails and scheduling our interviews. And number 2, with the tools, which is doing matching and candidate rediscovery and things of that nature.
Right. I totally agree with you, Mike. I'm tempted to talk about this, though it was never on my agenda. So, one of the use cases...
I was a recruiter for a living, Arun, man. I could talk. Don't.
So, one of the use cases that we work on is very close to what you said. Like, for example, you've got this 1,000 applicants. Forget the recruiter being able to talk to all of them. It's quite impossible to do that. But at the point of application in a career site or in a job board, we're trying to use generative AI to kind of generate questions on the fly, which can assess the fitment, the basic skill level, or at least get to a point where the recruiter doesn't have to look at it as 1,000, maybe 50 a day at best. And that too, you just weeding out maybe 100 that came in. I'm just going to talk to you maybe 50 a day at best, or 100 a week at best. So I think you're absolutely right. Top of the funnel, where you have significant volumes, that's a no-brainer. That's an area that there is a lot of potential on. But because we are talking about that, Mike, let me take your views on the challenges that you see from the enterprise side.
Yeah.
There are tools which are great. You touched upon one thing, which is about letting go of the ego, right? But there are system problems, there are IT systems, there is data that's being discussed here, personal data that could come in.
Yeah.
What do you think as some of those challenges in terms of change management, especially in the enterprise world?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the book that I read from The Innovator's Dilemma.
Yeah.
This is it. The innovator's dilemma is that you keep iterating and giving your customer what they want, and you get closer and closer and closer to your customer. And then somebody out of left field comes over and delivers something to your customer they never even knew they wanted, right? They didn't even know they wanted it. They didn't know they couldn't live without it. See also the iPhone, right? Something like that. Boom. The whole industry goes. This is what we're facing. As an industry, I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but automation This is a new round of automation. And what an industrial revolution or a revolution of any kind does is it makes it so things that were used to take a day take 4 hours. Like that's what happens. And with us in automation in recruiting, let's just be honest, we're going to lose jobs. We already are. If you look at demand for tech hires right now, it is in the same demand range as the pandemic. You're looking at April, May 2020 demand for software engineers right now. Why? Like if you look at the market, you wouldn't wonder. You'd wonder why in the world is there such a depression for tech right now? Why is tech in recession? And the answer is quietly because software engineers, they have there's not as many software engineers because they have a 55% increase in productivity, which is crazy for like $20 Copilot, but they're producing 50% more code. So you go from writing 100 lines of code a day to 155 lines of code a day. All of a sudden your software engineers are a lot more productive. Well, let's just say you're not going to let go of your software engineers because you have that, like built a team here. You're certainly not going to start hiring a bunch of them. And that's what we're seeing. The FANG companies have slowed down. We're looking at 500,000 layoffs in tech in the last 6 months, 8 months. Why? Automation. Software engineers are using GitHub, Copilot. It's a $20 a month tool, and they're 30 to 50% faster. That is a huge productivity increase when you talk about writing code, especially when you're writing code at scale. If you're someone like Amazon, and all of a sudden, all of your software engineers are 30 to 50% more effective, and they're writing more code. Companies have spent millions of dollars for increase in productivity, for a few percentage points of increase in productivity. You're talking about almost doubling your productivity gains. It's insane. We're looking at, for example, Amazon. I work in recruiting. There are no open jobs at Amazon right now for talent acquisition. There are several thousand recruiters working at Amazon. Why isn't Amazon replacing the recruiters who are leaving? I mean, it must be challenging to be a recruiter there because every time somebody leaves, you get extra work. But why globally has Amazon made the decision that they're not going to hire any more recruiters? Because they're going to automate. That's why. And our industry is just as susceptible to anyone else. And this is a warning. I know a lot of us take complacency in saying that there has to be a human in the process. And I'm going to agree with that point. However, there's no rule anywhere that says that has to be a professionally trained recruiter. It could be an HR specialist. The profession does not have to survive. It will for those who adopt AI, learn how to use it, and become data-driven. Because the other part of the problem we're having right now as an industry is we are candles in the wind, and we have no control over anything. And it's because as a profession, this is on us, we only did the tactical part of our job and focused on how do we get hires. And we forgot that we work in a business that makes money, and tactical delivery is not enough for a long-term survival. You need to be strategically valuable too. And the way we do that is we come up with these processes you're talking about. We volunteer to be the one who says, I will look at the tools in the market, because there are now tools that are built from the ground up with AI, and they're very inexpensive and they're very powerful. I mean, the other thing about what we're seeing today, in addition to the corporate abilities, is the empowerment of the individual recruiter. I mean, today I could give you tools, and for less than, I'd say, $500 a month, you could be up and running your own agency with all the tools to source, manage candidates, and submit them, and have some AI along the way to write your emails and your candidate pitches. You're talking about less than $500 a month in cost. So that's part of why the door closes, but it also opens a door, an opportunity. So the individual is now able to buy I could tell you for $500 a month, I worked at Twitter. I was the sourcing manager there. We had an Excel spreadsheet for our ATS. So for $500 a month, you can get more sophisticated tools than what I was using when I was running sourcing at Twitter. And that's pretty powerful. And so these tools will allow individuals to compete with companies. It will allow a rise, I think, of small staffing firms. So one hand, you can be internal and drive the innovation and understand how the tech all connects together and be the person who drives that. You can let someone in HR try and take that role if you're not ambitious, but you know how that's going to turn out. Or on the flip side, you can now actually have your own independent firm, especially for those of us who've been in the business for a minute. And if you have your own network, you know, there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, because you can get all the tools you need to set up your own business and set up your own shop relatively inexpensively.
Right. I think that leads me into another thought into this, Mike. So we're being actually, on one side, a little cautious about what that could mean for a lot of jobs. On the other side, you also did mention that this creates opportunities for a lot of enterprising young folks who want to kind of start off on their own. But let me take your thoughts to a few years back, right? When we were, let's say 10 years back, HR tech, especially recruiting tech, was not a very hot area where you saw a lot of startups or investor interest in that space. It was mostly HCM++, some bit of capabilities being built in pockets. But today, if you really look at it, especially after the kind of AI, and I personally believe that work tech transformed dramatically after COVID as well, because there was a lot of new models that everybody got used to in a very, very quick amount of time. That people were ready to kind of embrace this AI as well as part of talent functions. But keeping aside all this excitement around this, but how do you think, or how do you rate the maturity of commercially available recruiting tech automation platforms that you see? Do you see that they're really matured for enterprise adoption, or do you think a lot of it is still noise and story and yet not cracked the whole tech behind it?
Well, there are some pieces. So this is a good question. To be clear, where we are today is there are AI tools that can automate every single step in the recruitment process available in the market today. There are some areas where those tools are more developed and there's more investment. The number one area of AI investment in the market is in candidate matching, in trying to match the candidate to the requirement. Now, there's some value here to attach to the CRM and ATS, and that's the kind of sourcing that I'd say 90% of these tools are interested in, taking the data you already have and using that to match. And candidate rediscovery is actually valuable simply because, let's just say you have 10,000 Python developers in your database. When you search the CRM or the ATS, it's going to have a search result limit, 250, 500, I don't know what it is. But if you have 10,000 resumes, there's no way you can cut the keywords in enough different ways to see all those resumes, right? You're going to see the top 1,500 over and over and over in different because of the keywords, right? And that one search engine is limited. And so there's no real way for you to get all of the information out of the ATS by searching the ATS, which is ridiculous. However, these new AI tools will be able to do that. So there's going to be some value there for recruiters and sourcers, because you're now actually going to be able to have access to your full ATS. And I think in some cases, having access to the full ATS and the ability to screen the inbound candidates and find, candidate 147 is a 90% match, in combination will be enough actually to eliminate the need for sourcing in some cases, just because they get this improved efficiency and delivery out of their existing channels that they couldn't get before. So automation is possible. Where it's weak right now is in sourcing. And I don't necessarily mean by writing the outreach. There's a billion tools that could do that. But finding the contact information, and this is where I actually like where I work at Revelio, is this is one of the things we specialize in, is providing a full picture of person's name, their contact information, their salary, their flight risk level, their sentiment, things of this nature, to try and understand the entire picture, because people are more than just their job search. Shocking. Spoiler alert, right? So the tools exist. Where it's strongest is in matching. Where it struggles the most is sourcing. And by sourcing, I mean just purely contact information, old school research, finding someone's email, finding someone's text message. This is where almost no focus has been, and no applications of AI. There are one or two companies who try it, who do sourcing, and will automate kind of the outbound a bit. But this is what really baffles me about why this is happening. I would have expected this to happen in reverse. With all of the experts we have in this field of finding email addresses, I figured somebody would have built an AI email address finder by now. Like, I don't know why that doesn't exist. I have one that will tease out an email address of anybody I find if I know where they work. I know the name of the company. I have an AI that will do that. But I don't know why somebody isn't like, oh, okay, well, here's the email format for Microsoft. So, let's automate that process. Once we find out the format, just plug in the name, plug it into the format, and then send the email. I don't know why companies struggle doing that, but I haven't seen a platform that could do that yet. I've seen platforms, like I mentioned, we have that type of data, but we don't have that type of automation in the moment. We're moving towards matching like everybody else. But it is a caution and warning for recruiters, because today it is possible to do this, but it's disjointed. You'd really have to know the phone screeners, the video interviewers, it's a lot of different tools and a lot of different integrations at the moment. But what we know from market trends and from market history is you're going to grow. There's going to be a bunch of new vendors, right? And then as the market reaches maturity, they're going to consolidate. Somebody's going to start buying these companies up and consolidating the market, because that's just what happens, right? Like, that's the cycle. Right. And it's important to understand the cycle we're in. From a perspective of how does it impact us? If nothing changed, there was no new technology, and we just kind of got the LLM bug, which is the last year and a half is what we've had. The technology has a $13 to $18 trillion impact on the global economy. For reference, the global economy is about $100 trillion. Right. So you're talking about a substantial impact. This is computer, internet, mobile phone level disruption. The challenge is we're not done with the revolution yet. And here's the trick from a technology standpoint. What we've discovered is something very unexpected as we build these models out. GPT-2 was trained on a couple million books, or a couple thousand books. GPT-3 was a couple million. GPT-4, hundreds of millions, billions, right? But as we plot capabilities and responses, there's a almost 1-to-1 ratio between the volume of data and the quality of the output. And it's the more data you put into your model, the better it performs. This is not normal. This is not an expected outcome, actually. We have no idea why pouring more information into this transformer system makes it more capable. But that's been the experience. And so if you take where it is today and you say, you know what, we've ran our course, we've gone as far as we can on this particular plot line, it's going to stop doing this and it's going to start doing this, which is totally possible. However, given the amount of money and amount of focus and attention and potential utility of this tool and how long it's taken us to actually accumulate the data to build it, I mean, when you think about it, just like 7,000 years of accumulated human knowledge at your fingertips in one database, that is genuinely impressive, and took thousands of years and millions of hours of human effort to just create that much data, to make that much data about the world. So we have inherited a heck of a dividend. And the expert I follow, he used to be the head of Mensa International. He said, you want to know how you know if a species is really smart? Instead of inventing or solving their individual problems, they invent something that solves all of them. That's the smartest thing to do. Invent something that solves all of your problems. If you're really smart, that's what you would do. And this is where we're headed with AI. And so with the amount of data and the amount of money that's being funneled into these systems, I fully expect this to continue and the capabilities to increase. Two things to look for in the near future as far as capabilities go. First, video, audio. It will be able to speak to you and understand your voice, and it will speak back to you. First, it's going to be audio, and then we'll get video. And in the not too distant future, it will be, I'd say 12 to 24 months, there will be AI avatars that are so good, they will be indistinguishable from a human being. And when you're on a Zoom call, you won't be able to tell if you're talking to a human being or not. And that poses a lot of challenges, but that's where the technology is headed if we continue down this path.
I'm not sure how to respond to that, Mike. Is that going to be scary, or is that going to be a lot of fun working with these avatars? But, as they say, the inevitable, right? That I think is going to be the path that you were referring to in terms of how these technologies are evolving. But as we conclude our session today, Mike, I got to thank you a lot. I'm pretty sure our audience would also be super excited, especially to hear your some of your thoughts on how this is going to shape in the future. But I'm super psyched about this. I personally believe that there is a lot that humanity would benefit out of it in terms of productivity, in terms of enhanced experience, in terms of really balancing the cost and the satisfaction aspect that you spoke about. Once again, Mike, I want to really, really thank you. I just feel in my heart today that if I wish this podcast could last for more time, but as they say, all good things have to come to an end. Thank you so much, Mike, for sparing the time, speaking to our audience today. Would love to keep this conversation going forward. And for all of us on this audience, please go check out his book, The AI Recruiter. It's on Amazon. Do get a copy soon. Thank you so much, Mike, once again.
Thanks, Arun.